Good morning to everyone. It's 10 o'clock. We're going to get started here. Again, good morning. I'm going to call this meeting to order. Patty, would you call a roll, please?
Al Eckert.
Here.
Doug Melton.
Here.
Rusty Moss.
Here.
Chris Racy.
Here.
David Vandergriff.
Here.
Wes Moore. We have a quorum.
Thank you. Commissioners, our next item is the approval of the April 26th commission meeting minutes. If all of you had a chance to review those, are there any additions or corrections from anyone? Motion for acceptance, is there a second? Have a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Next on our agenda is the Chief Administrator report. Bailey Taylor, Chief Administrator. Welcome. Thank you. A surprise guest.
Oh, thank you. Good morning. You know, when I was in college, younger, I used to have maybe a little anxiety, be nervous about speaking in front of people. But after watching TV last night, I decided there's no expectation that you're coherent or form complete sentences, so all the pressure's off at this point in time. I do want to give you a few updates at the department level, and I'm asked to be here this morning, and I appreciate the opportunity to be here. We've had some changes, obviously, within the department, specifically with the Division of Environmental Quality. We had Caleb Osborne, who had been serving as the Chief Administrator of the Environment and DEQ Director, who took a job in the private sector, still in Arkansas, still around. We still see him at the Capitol, but he has moved over into the private sector. His last day is the 31st of this year, so he's no longer in that position, but we wish him the best of luck. I've been working with the governor's office and a process and identifying how to move forward and selecting the new Chief Administrator of the Environment, DEQ Director. We're going through that process and we'll continue to work through that process. But in the interim, we have Bailey Taylor, who has agreed to once again stand in a gap for us. That's her thing for us right now, because she's still in for a lot of different positions as we transition. So I will let Bailey go through her update in just a few moments, but I just wanted to take a moment to introduce you all to Bailey in her capacity now as the interim DEQ Director and Chief Administrator of the Environment. So thank you, Bailey, for that, always for stepping in, doing these things. A couple other changes I wanted to let you know, not necessarily on the PC&E side or DEQ side specifically, but we've also had a lot of change in the fiscal department. And being that today is the last day of the fiscal year for the state, it's been a little bit interesting because both, well, our CFO and both our grants people in shared services have left the department, some for other state agencies, promotions, and other state agencies, and others for personal reasons. So we've kind of been in a little bit of a scramble, trying to make sure that we're drawing down grants appropriately and getting things done by the end of the fiscal year. And I just want to take a moment and thank all the fiscal staff. And it's one of those things I would love to name them all, but I'm sure I would forget somebody, but they know who they are. We've also had a lot of people filling in and helping out with that process to try to close out our fiscal year as smoothly as possible. So we're still in that process, obviously, with the department level. Couple other items I want to mention specifically related to EcoVista, and I know that you all have an appeal, and I promise what I'm going to talk about is not subject to that appeal, but I wanted to let you know of other activities around EcoVista landfill that we've engaged in at the department level, or at least other entities in this department have engaged in. So first of all, our Office of State Geologists, we've agreed to do a groundwater sampling project. That's going to be a 3-mile radius around the EcoVista landfill using the Office of State Geologists. This is a result of some discussions that I had with Representatives Lundstrom and Unger during the fiscal session. They actually had proposed a bill to have UA do that study. We met with them and agreed to do that study ourselves using the Office of State Geologists. So we have a team that's been identified. We have one geologist supervisor, one professional geologist, one geologist, and the primary team. They'll be receiving supplemental support and assistance from our state geologist and our assistant state geologist. In that process, probably we're anticipating a formal report from the Office of State Geologist in January of 2026. That will give them basically a year of testing and analytical results, and then to come up with that study that we've agreed to do with Representatives Unger and Lundstrom. Also, many of you may know that at the department level, we did do some air monitoring based on some complaints we received in and around Taneytown. We did our initial air monitoring with the Arkansas National Guard in December of last year. I think specifically it was December 22nd, with some handheld monitoring instruments that the National Guard has. They were able to go do a 24-hour test. They basically had some results and said there's potentially the presence of sulfur dioxide in that area, and they recommended a 5-day test. So we worked with the Department of Health, and we engaged CTEH, the environmental consultant, to do some more sensitive analytical air testing and for a longer period of time. So in February, we did a 5-day test, and those results indicated there was not the presence of either sulfur dioxide or hydrogen sulfide, but they did indicate the presence of benzene and acrolein. Now, those levels were below the industrial levels for those items, but they were right at or right above the residential screening levels for those. We did have background monitorings, and one of the things that was interesting, at least to us, is that the background samples showed the same thing. So working with CTH, working with the health department, we came up with a more robust testing plan, a lot more sensors out there. I think we ended up with 14 or 15 different stations on that second test, or the third test we've done. The second one was CTH. That test was done from April 28th to April 30th. And at this point in time, we are still awaiting those results. We haven't received the report or the verified results from CTH. We have received the unverified raw data, but just kind of put that out. I know that some of you have asked about that, and a lot of people in this room keep asking about that. And I just wanted to let everybody know that, yes, we've done that. Yes, we are waiting on those results from CTH. And as soon as we get those results, we'll be able to analyze them and figure out if there are any next steps for us to do in terms of further testing or different testing in different directions, or I don't know what we're going to see until we see those results. So we're going to continue to move forward with that. Another item I want to mention is on June 15th, so a couple weeks ago on that Saturday of Father's Day weekend, we did discover an oil release in the Smackover area. Actually a fairly large release from the Martin operating facility. It's a refinery in South Arkansas. Some of you may know it as the Cross Refinery. Now it's the Martin operating facility. And what happened is there is a storage tank for crude oil and a pipeline that goes from that storage tank into the refinery. It is an 8-inch line in diameter. It had a break in the pipeline somewhere underground. And basically the estimates right now are about 2,500 barrels of oil were released. It's in a drainage area. It goes into Holmes Creek and then into Smackover Creek. Most of it at this point is contained within Holmes Creek. There was some of it that got into the Smackover Creek, but they have been working hard. They've engaged a team that's been in there. I think at one point, like 270 people there the other day working on this cleanup effort. That's in addition to all of our staff. So we have staff from Office of Water Quality, Oil and Gas Commission, and obviously our emergency management folks have been there pretty much since then. I know Game and Fish is involved with that as well. EPA is involved. Coast Guard's been there. The good news is they are starting to make a lot of headway. They've recovered about half of that product at this point in time. I think the last report I saw was like 1,253 barrels has been recovered already. Most of it, I think, is back into Holmes Creek. At the time, I think it's back over, well, they may still have some booms and different areas where they're doing some remediation. It's mostly back into Holmes Creek, but just wanted to let you know that was going on. We'll continue to work with EPA. EPA is, I guess, a co-lead. We're all co-leads at this point in time. I think technically EPA probably has primacy if there was an issue at this moment in time, but that's during the initial emergency response phase. I know we're already talking about though when they're going to start scaling back, they'll probably start moving to daytime operations only because it's been a 24-hour operation thus far. And then once EPA leaves, then we'll continue to address that on the state level to make sure the remediation is working with Game and Fish and others project. Last thing I want to mention is that the department is also involved in our Arkansas Forward initiative. This is an initiative that Governor Sanders has done for all state agencies, state departments. I know the Agriculture Department was in phase 1, so they've already been through what we're about to do the next 2 weeks. We're in phase 2, so we're looking forward to participating in that study. And just once again, I want to thank you for a few minutes to talk to you this morning, and I'm going to turn it over to Bailey, and I wanted to just make sure that I had a chance to introduce her and thank her for her service.
Before you step away, is any commissioners have any questions? I just had one with regard to the testing you referred to. Was that discussed with any of the citizens up there about that activity that was ongoing?
Was the testing, air testing that we're doing?
Yeah,
or
and
groundwater testing.
And well, both. I mean, just was there information provided to anybody up there what you guys were going to be doing?
Yes, in the sense that both the groundwater and sampling protocol was obviously discussed and agreed to with Representatives Unger and Lundstrom. Also, the air quality testing, we have been keeping the legislative group up to speed with where we are in that process. And I think I sent those results of the tests that we did to the representatives, but also Mayor Angie Russell as well, at least the latest report that we've done in the February testing.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Ms. Taylor, welcome.
Thank you. Good morning, Commissioners. So as Secretary said, my name is Bailey Taylor, and I am happy to serve in any role at the department, but I'm especially honored to serve in this one on the interim basis. I want to introduce a new member. So last commission meeting, I believe I was the interim Associate Director for Office of Land Resources. Well, we have a permanent or a new member at Office of Land Resources, Brian Lehmans. He's going to stand up there in the back. He came to us from the Office of Water Quality. He was the Senior Operations Manager there. He had previously worked inland in the Solid Waste Department, and he has been here since 1999. So we're glad to have him here and running that office. You're all aware of the tornadic activity that happened in May of this year in Northwest Arkansas. So with that came a lot of storm debris, vegetative and other construction demolition waste. There's allowed in the statute a way for us to pre-assess some burn sites for the counties to burn their vegetative debris, and they can have up to 4 sites. There were a couple of counties that needed additional sites, and we were happy to accommodate that. We go out and inspect those sites and make sure that it's not going to impact anyone to burn just the vegetative storm debris. But Baxter and Benton County needed a few more sites to provide more accessibility for citizens and also just to the sheer volume. So we're happy to support and accommodate those efforts while they're going through those issues. There was a permit listed on your commission report that you received that I would like to highlight because it had been administratively continued for some time, and that permit is Texas Corporation Central Plant. It's the Office of Water Quality permit and PDS permit. This permit had previously been appealed to the commission. It went to circuit court. It went to the Arkansas Supreme Court, which affirmed the ALJ's decision. So that's encouraging to hear. But nonetheless, it took some efforts on the Office of Water Quality and on the part of the permittee, and even some discussions with EPA. And we're really proud that we were able to issue that permit and get it off of the administrative status, and for them to have a protective and sound permit. I also want to mention in May, the Office of Water Quality Inspector Supervisor Brent Walker, he worked with Game and Fish. They were having a fishing derby in the city of Tuckerman's youth fishing derby. And when they had the fish there was an issue with some low DO. And so he worked round the clock with the Game and Fish and helped resolve that issue. And so we're really happy for that, because today there were 102 children registered for that. So we're really happy to be able to support those efforts and get those kids fishing. Lastly, I just want to mention the Office of Air Quality and their pursuit in modeling the particulate matter 2.5 to be specific, for the National Ambient Air Quality Standard that was recently reduced by the EPA. So we'll be going through some modeling efforts to try to better get a better grasp on our air quality as far as particulate matter is concerned.
Commissioner Milton? Okay. Do you have any questions for Ms. Taylor? All right. Thank you so much. Commissioner Milton has a question.
Mr. Secretary. Yes, sir. The chairman brought up an interesting question about the dissemination of this information in Tawnytown. I know in the past instances, we've put some access to data on the website. Is that being done, or are you going to have some town halls, or is there some way that this can be disseminated to the community? Well, we have received FOIA requests for all the information from Mr. Lovitz here and others. We've been happy to share those information. I'm happy to share the information we'll get from CTH as soon as we get it with that group. I think we are very transparent in giving that information. I think there's a little bit of concern on their end right now as to why we don't have that report from CTH, the latest one. But I believe that we should have that in the next few days, hopefully sometime next week, and we'll be happy to share those results with everybody as well. Outstanding. Thank you.
All right, any other questions? All right, at this time we'll have public comments. I have the 4 cards. Judge, would you please kind of go through, since we have a recommended decision issue on today, would you kind of go through the rules on this again?
Well, I can't imagine that any of the cards that have been filled out are named parties. Currently on the class 1, what we have is the city and the mayor. So I don't see the mayor out there unless she signed up for public comment. These folks are free to comment on the proposed recommendation if they so desire. So I'd say 5 minutes apiece.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. All right. The first, Kenneth Lovett. Mr. Lovett, good morning, sir.
Good morning. My name is Kenneth Lovett, and I'm coming before you as a victim of vapors that are emitted from EcoVista Waste Management and allowed by poorly written regulations approved by Arkansas Pollution and Control and Ecology Commission. Citizens of Tawnytown came to this commission over 2 years ago asking for help. Mr. Melton specifically stated we needed to talk to our lawyer. The commission could not help us, yet here we are today. And today you will vote to determine our future in the expansion. There are other options. Trash disposal, not allow the expansion of EcoVista and continue pollution for any longer is requested. In the town hall meeting in Tawnytown concerning EcoVista expansion, I asked Mr. McAllister why ADEQ was fighting against the citizens. He stated ADEQ was following the legal process. Problem is, we have a legal process, we have a judicial process, and we have a moral process. All of them are failing in this issue. Mr. Heister never gives out all the details. He stated that the Eagle Vista expansion was just a sliver of land in a valley. What he did not mention was the sliver of land would lay up against the currently closed Class 1 landfill that does not have a liner under it. Pressure and more pollution will cause it to flow into our karst landscape. And this expansion of this sliver of land will rise up above both of these hills, the South Class 1 that's closed, the North Class 1 closed, and will take a larger footprint. And Secretary Corey pointed out April 28th through April 30th, CETA did a test in the area. The way that we got the raw data is we requested a FOIA. There was no other communication. But the raw data, when you look at it, some of these numbers in acrolein and benzene, if you start doing a number test, you go way above the percentage that the RSL is supposed to be. Acrolein itself is a chemical found in e-cigarettes that can cause lung damage and increase the risk of cardiopulmonary disease. Acrolein is a herbicide that primarily used to kill weeds. It can cause acute lung injury, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, COPD, asthma, and lung cancer. One study suggests that acrolein may be the main cause of adverse effects of vascular function caused by oxidative stress blood vessels. And the acrolein, the RSL, which is regional screening level, the RSL limit is 0.021. The sample range started out at 0.17 and the highest was 0.48. If y'all start taking your math to that, you'll see it's quite a percentage difference. Benzene, RSL, 0.36. The specified range or sample range identified was 0.036, which is the RSL limit, up to 1.1. Figure that in your math calculations. We do not need an expansion and continued pollution in our area. We have contractors that can carry it to other places. Eco Vista has served its purpose. It needs to be closed and it needs to be cleaned up. If you vote today to allow this expansion, your vote to kill us, period. Thank y'all. I will pass this out so y'all have this information also. I can't take one yet, Jack.
Our next commenter, Adam Soto. Mr. Soto, good morning.
Good morning. Well, I'm here today as I'm concerned about the health for me and my family and the neighbors. And I hope the money is not driving this decision to expand the landfill. So please concern with over health and safety, please deny the expansion for our safety or all neighbors in the area. Thank you.
Thanks, sir. Our next commenter, Mark Calcagni. Mr. Calcagni, good morning.
Morning. I want to say thank you. You guys have always been very gracious to allow me to come talk to you and hear me cry and whine. But I always come with facts and truths. And you know, the facts and truths I've always reported, unlike some legal people in this room that said that the area is not karst. That is either a lie or a misunderstanding. I'll let you decide that. Again, I'm Mark Calcagni. I live at 12642 Arbor Acres Road. I'm here representing our Tinytown neighbors and the city of Tinytown. The last time I spoke to the commission, I was disappointed with Judge Moulton's decision, even though we have shown evidence of waste management red dye test showed up in Wildcat Creek that flows into the Illinois River, which is a source of water for Oklahoma. And the only reason that the city knew about this was because one of our neighbors discovered the red dye, you know, close to their house. We also showed dated pictures of debris, trash that was along the roads on numerous occasions. We've had numerous complaints air and solid waste sites and shown dated pictures of improper coverage of class 1 and class 4 areas. You know, the host city, Tinytown, rejected expansion in late 2022 and then again in 2 other times in early 2023 with stronger language for regulation 22.203 and 22.204. The matter you cannot have it both ways with waste management contracted fees to the city does not make sense to me. As the city incurs costs with having a landfill, and I mentioned contracted fees, waste management contracted fees with the city. You know, the city has costs having a landfill with fire protection, police protection, and code enforcement. That's all come into play at this site. Also, road maintenance, which is big. I mean, the cost of road maintenance is huge with the heavy landfill traffic along the trash, along the route. And then trash pickup and administrative costs, handling complaints and issues. Many costs incurred by the city. There are also 14 housing subdivisions within 1.5 miles of this landfill. EPA states that there should not be housing within 1 mile of a landfill. Tinytown is the fastest growing city percentage-wise in Arkansas. You know, the judge didn't have all the health information that were discovered by the 2 separate National Guard air tests that showed high levels of benzene, acrolein, and sulfur dioxide, all harmful to the health of our citizens. I would think it is important with health more so than dollars. I feel ADEQ tried to disprove the National Guard's test with high on CTEH to test the air on April 28th and through April 30th of this year. So we did FOIA and got the raw data of that information that found 5 harmful chemicals that were over the RSL regional screening levels, and I guess it's set by the EPA. Acrolein was found above RSL. It can cause dizziness, lightheadedness, nausea, headache, and passing out. Higher levels can cause unconsciousness and cause death. It irritates the lungs. It's linked to asthma, COPD, and even respiratory cancer. Carbon tetrachloride was found at a high level, which affects the liver, kidneys, and central nervous system. When inhaled, causes headaches, weakness, lethargicness, nausea, and vomiting. Benzene was found higher than the regional screening levels. Benzene is a carcinogen. Short-term exposure to high concentrates can cause headaches, dizziness, drowsiness, confusion, unconsciousness, rapid or irregular heartbeat, and tremors. Chloroform was detected at a higher level. Short-term exposure can cause headaches, dizziness, fatigue. Long-term exposure can cause liver, kidney, and brain damage. Naphthalene was found at a higher level. Acute exposure to humans is associated with hemolytic anemia that damages the liver and a neurological damage. Cataracts have been reported to workers exposed to naphthalene. These 5 harmful chemicals were found with the ADQ CTE air test in April. 2 months ago, we tried to get this via FOIA, and we did get it, but it came a lot longer than we thought it should. And then we also would like the specific information for that, and that's been 1.5 months ago. We haven't got it. It's kind of like Secretary Corey says that they're waiting for that information. Now, Waste Management is requesting to add another candlestick flare per the ADQ air permit application. I don't know what that's going to do. Is that going to make it worse? I don't know. And, you know, they have flares over there and I don't believe they're working. That's my opinion. Waste Management knows they are not operating safely, and this area is too populated for a landfill, especially with all the issues. I don't think it's coincidental that many of us have experienced many of these symptoms or have neighbors that have lung cancer or have died from lung cancers. I could list them for you. Or healthy young people that have heart issues. We had one young person that just died that lived next to the landfill, and it was, I don't believe it's coincidental as either.
Okay, I'm sorry, you're out of time.
Just one more thing, if you wouldn't mind, I got one more sentence.
Sure thing.
I hope you can, I said, you got me off again. What's it gonna take? More sickness and more death to get the attention of the state agencies responsible for environmental quality or pollution control? I hope you are not afraid to do the right thing by denying this expansion and find a more suitable place for a landfill. Thank you.
Our last commenter is Michelle Carpenter. Ms. Carpenter, good morning.
Thank you for allowing us to speak and present to you today. We really do appreciate it. A lot of times it really feels like we haven't been heard or we're disregarded. So I truly appreciate the time that you're taking with us. I personally took off today to come to speak with you. I work as a speech language pathologist in the public schools and with a pediatric clinic in the Springdale area. I'm a concerned Tawnytown citizen and believe wholeheartedly that the needs of our citizens, the taxpayers, frankly, are wholeheartedly being disregarded. Y'all have heard about all the findings with all these horrible chemicals that we're breathing. People often complain about the smell. Well, yeah, it's going to smell. We live by a landfill. That's going to happen. What concerns me is a lot of gases can't smell. So, I mean, when I'm out in my yard and I'm watering my flowers and I'm out there more than 10 minutes, I get a headache. And I oftentimes, it doesn't smell. I'm like, well, what's wrong with me? Okay. I'm very healthy. I only take allergy medications. I don't have a lot of health issues, thank God, yet. But with all of these reports, I mean, what is my future? What is my family's future? And then, it's not right. I think it's not been made clear to you guys how close all of our subdivisions are. We're within 1.5 miles of this landfill. I do not know of any other landfill in Arkansas, at least, or nationwide, probably, that has a landfill of this size that is as close to this many people. As was mentioned before, Tawnytown is the fastest growing city in Arkansas. We've raised our population by 12%, and it's going to continue to grow. I mean, my subdivision alone, I mean, I know of 15 houses that were just built. So it just keeps multiplying, and then there's another subdivision being built as well. So my question is, why in the world were the subdivisions even approved if the landfill was going to stay in operation? When I bought 2 years ago, it was not mentioned that that's where the landfill was. I didn't even know. There wasn't a sign up. I had no way of knowing. My realtor didn't express that there was a landfill, because that's what people have come back to. Why did you buy here? There's a landfill. Didn't you know? No, I didn't know. Would I have bought there? No, I would have never put my family in danger. There's so many concerning factors in this that just seem to be disregarded. Not only the smell, the gases, there's also noise pollution. Literally 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning, the big trucks come down Clink Road. That's where my subdivision is off of, with Wildcat Creek right there. I hear them. It wakes me up. Light sleeper. That's not right. Rollins Elementary School is 1.5 miles as the crow flies. Think about they're going out for recess. Teachers have morning duty out there. You have all of the kids that are waiting at the bus stops. They're all getting exposed to this daily basis. That's extremely concerning. And if you do not take that in consideration, I personally feel like you're giving us a death sentence or multiple health issues at best. Thank you.
Thank you. That is the last comment card that we received. Does anyone here also want to make a public comment at this time before we close that? All right, thank you. Next on the agenda, Solid Waste Licensing Committee, Randy Harper. Mr. Harper, good morning.
Good morning. My name is Randy Harper. I'm here representing the Solid Waste Licensing Committee this morning. And we have some vacancies on the committee that we would like to bring to your attention for appointment. And so we have 3 individuals who the committee has requested appointment for their first term. That's Mr. Joseph Pence. He is Executive Director of the Northeast Arkansas Solid Waste Management District. Mr. John Tyson, who's the manager of the Columbia County Solid Waste, and Ms. Crystal Baker, the director of the Madison County Recycling and Solid Waste. We also have 2 additional members who are up for their second and final term. That's Mr. Jeff Barfield. He's the landfill manager at Upper Southwest Regional Solid Waste Management District, and myself. And with that, sir, I would entertain any questions.
Commissioners, any questions? All right, I believe there's a minute order that we need a motion for adoption. Is there a second? Second. All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Thank you, sir.
Next on the agenda, the Wastewater Licensing Committee, Sarah Pierce. Good morning, Ms. Pierce.
Morning, how are you this?
Good, thank you.
The Arkansas Wastewater Licensing Committee would like to request 2 reappointments for the committee. The first request for reappointments, Mr. Jeff Ford. Mr. Ford will complete his first term with the committee in the active wastewater treatment plant operator position. Mr. Ford's term will expire on August 31st of 24. The committee would like to request that the commission recommendation and reappoint Mr. Ford to the Wastewater Licensing Committee for his second 3-year term, which would expire on August 31st of 20. The committee also requests reappointment for Mr. Austin Ramsfield. Mr. Ramsfield will complete his first term with the committee in the active wastewater treatment plant operator position. Mr. Ramsfield's term will expire on November 30th of 24. The committee would like to request that the commission accept this recommendation and reappoint Mr. Ramsfield for his second 3-year term, which will expire on November 30th of 27.
Thank you. Any questions? Also, we have a minute order. Need a motion for adoption. Second? All right. All those in favor say aye. Thank you. All right. The next thing on the agenda is the recommended decision on EcoVista, docket number 23-013. I will turn this over to Judge Moulton as to the arguments. I've said this 2 or 3 times in these matters, but I always want to say it one more time for the record, at least, that Mr. Vandergriff and myself both have a conflict of interest in this matter, and we do not participate and will not participate and will not vote in this matter. At that, Charlie, I'll turn it over to you on this.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, the City of Tawnytown and Mayor Russell have asked for requested oral argument under our rule. Each side gets 15 minutes to make their presentation. I believe Mr. Nolan, you've got my proposed minute order, and you got Mr. Nolan's proposed minute order in your packet. So, want to come on up? How much time would you like to reserve for rebuttal?
Oh, about 3 minutes, and I'll keep up with it up here.
Please proceed.
Thank you. Thank you for recognizing me. I am Ross Noland, and this month I'm here on behalf of Mayor Angie Russell and the City of Tawnytown. I am here today on behalf of those petitioners in their appeal of the permit to expand EcoVista's Class one landfill in Tawnytown. Mayor Russell is not here today. She made travel plans based on the previously published June 21st meeting date. So I hope you know that her dedication to this issue is not wavering. She's been here nearly every month for some time now. Just a conflict based on a scheduling confusion has occurred, and things were already set in place. So this permit appeal, or at least the portion of it that went all the way through the administrative trial in February, is about groundwater monitoring and modeling, as well as emergency communications, especially in regards to fire. I'm not arguing the local approval issues that have previously been before you in the Class 4 permit. While those were part of this appeal, they were released from the case before we went to administrative trial. That's why there's a reference to order number 5 in your agenda. And so I'm focusing on order number 6 and matters pertaining to groundwater and emergency communications and fire that went to trial. So what, in regards to that emergency communications and fire, is required? Arkansas Pollution Control and Ecology Commission Rule 22.416 imposes a prohibition at solid waste facilities. 22.411 requires communications and emergency response, stating that an adequate telephone communication system is required, as well as a on-site plan that's written, and a written emergency response plan maintained on site. Finally, we have 22.413, which requires adequate cover to control fire. So those are the 3 rules that we were looking at when we discuss emergency communications and fire. So in response to the operations plan, in response to those rules, the operations plan has a few references to fire. And I've put a couple of copies of the relevant sections of the operations plan in front of you, partially because I had a missed citation in my brief, and I know Mr. Melton's been following along with our requests for hearing and for our briefing, so I put something in there that said page 641 when it was in fact page 741, and that is the 3.1 from Appendix G of the operations plan there. So I wanted to make sure and clear that up and that we were referencing the proper documents. But the 2 pieces of paper that are in front of you, 5.111 and from the operations plan, and 3.1 from Appendix G of that plan, are the entirety of the emergency communications and fire response planning for this facility. Needless to say, there is no reference in these documents to how a mass or a large catastrophic event will be addressed. These are very small time issues. Keep a fire extinguisher on site. You know, call the fire department if you can't immediately put it out. But our issue that we raised at trial is what happens if there's a bigger event? How do you notify the community to shelter in place versus evacuate? How do you designate someone to immediately begin testing in the event of a catastrophic event? Who is going to coordinate that? How is the facility going to communicate and coordinate with the fire department? Where is the closest fire hydrant? What is the capacity of that fire hydrant? If the Tawnytown Fire Department in the facility can't handle it, who is the next call that you make? Is it a neighboring town? Mr. Tallheimer, our professional firefighter and engineer, suggested maybe it's even a competitor that you have a joint response agreement with. But we don't know. Those things aren't addressed. Nothing in the planning documents to date deals with how a catastrophic event would be addressed or responded to in the event it were to occur. So our expert that I referenced a minute ago is an engineer and a firefighter who specializes in landfill fires. And he testified at trial that the fundamental understanding that a small fire becomes a large based upon the simple fact that you're not providing communication, you're not providing training, you're not providing interconnection between the fire department and the waste facility is a very specific concern to this site and its operational and planning documents. That's the crux of our emergency communications and fire issue here, is that there's no planning. There's no way or documents here that address what's going to happen if a bigger event occurs, how to train to prevent that event, how to communicate with the fire department. Repeatedly in these documents, we see over and over again that there is some written agreement with the Tawnytown Fire Department. That agreement doesn't exist. We've asked everyone. And that reference repeatedly to an agreement with the Tawnytown Fire Department is a product of the fact that the entirety of these plans are a cut and paste job from previously existing documents. Nobody with ADEQ or with EcoVista took the time to tailor the fire and communications plans in this permit application to conditions on the ground that are occurring today. In fact, when asked, nobody knows who even wrote these operations plans. Nobody with DEQ or with EcoVista that was involved in the preparation of this operations plan has fire expertise or background. The only testimony at the administrative trial of someone with a fire and landfill background was our expert. And he says that these documents are woefully inadequate to prevent a small event from becoming a large event. Again, chief amongst those concerns is especially for the citizens of Tawnytown, some of whom are here today, is the lack of a plan for emergency communications with citizens in the area should a catastrophic event occur. So cutting and pasting is not protective of human health and the environment. Ms. Bott, the engineer responsible for stamping the operating plan, did this. Cut and paste plans from previous ones. Ms. Darrington also has no fire background. Mr. Hayden with DEQ said this is not, who reviewed the permit application, said fire is not his thing. Nobody took ownership of the emergency communications and fire prevention and response during this permitting process. Simply documents or language that existed previously, cut and pasted and reused without thought as to what the impact of that or the compliance with 22.411 is. So there's no changes, no updates, and there's no expertise amongst the people who prepared these documents and communications and fire response and prevention. So now is the time to get it right and modify the permit to have a proper emergency communications and fire response and prevention plan. This is our opportunity. And as of now, there are no significant requirements to do that, despite the language in 22.411 saying you have to have adequate communications means and an adequate plan that's on site. It's our testimony at trial that those don't exist, and there's really no one on the other side, either DEQ or EcoVista, who has the expertise to say that we're wrong about that. There's no expert on the other side on fire, landfills, response, communications, and prevention. It's just not in the record. We've provided that testimony. We've asked that the permit be remanded to address those matters. The second big issue that I want to address today is groundwater site characterization and modeling. Petitioner's contention here is twofold: that the monitoring network is not sufficient and that no full comprehensive site characterization is present. In the record, our claims in this area are supported by the expert testimony of Steve Hart, a professional geologist. So we're dealing with two rules here. First one is Pollution Control and Ecology Commission Rule 22.11101, which requires thorough characterization of all aspects of the property prior to a landfill permitting decision. The second one is 22.1201, which states that monitoring should be capable of detecting pollution as soon as possible. So these two rules have to be read together. You model it, a full site characterization, and then based on that model, you then develop and implement a monitoring network. And here, Judge Moulton, we do prevail in part, recommends an increase in monitoring frequency and during storm events, which are things that Mr. Hart testified, and an increase in the location to include additional springs and streams. This is a great start, increasing monitoring, and petitioners appreciate a win on something, but the fact remains that this increase in monitoring is not informed by an actual comprehensive site characterization, which is what the rule requires. This is out of order. Characterize, then establish the monitoring network. And again, we are very happy that additional monitoring is going to happen, required by the permit, which is what we asked for, but we wanted it to be informed by site characterization. So to be clear, again, we're talking about Rule 22.1102 entitled Facility Design, that the conceptual hydrogeologic model of the site must be developed. All characterization studies, that means in the past too, must be integrated into a comprehensive geologic model which accurately describes and explains the site hydrogeology. The model must be of sufficient detail to base the design and be used as a predictive tool for potential contamination migration and serve as a basic corrective actions. All right, so our problem here was that going back to 1996, conceptual site models insisted that the water, groundwater from this site was moving to the southeast. Repeatedly, from 96 study to an 02-03 study, and don't have the time to walk through each one of these studies, did the best I could in the briefing. There were indications, here and there, that showed that the groundwater was either radial or also moving to the north and west towards spring, where of course, after the 2020 dye testing, dye was found, not to the southeast, but to the northwest of the property. And the conceptual site model that informed that testing still insisted that water was only moving to the southeast. It was only by chance, by a neighbor, as Mr. Calcagni referenced, that dye was found because the model still said the water is moving to the southeast. At the time this permit application was made, the last conceptual site model in the record insisted that groundwater was still moving to the southeast. This permit application was not informed by the fact that groundwater is, according to Mr. Hart, either radial, moving extremely fast, and also moving to the northwest. That is not the information upon which this application was made. And I think that's in part because nobody involved ever took the time to go back and do what the site characterization rule requires. And that's look at everything. In our brief, we walked through one after the other, asking people who were involved, like Mr. Sadler here at DEQ, were you aware of the finding in the July 2020 report that site reconnaissance identified 16 previously unidentified seeps and springs? No. Would it be helpful to understand the location of 16 seeps and springs prior to issuing a permit? Yes. Again, we did this over and over with their experts at EcoVista and with DEQ. Nobody took the time to get the whole picture. They were critical of our expert because he studied the site for 40 to 50, 60 hours when he started coming to trial. But he was the only one that looked at all the tests, all the dive monitoring, and realized that there was a problem with the conceptual site model and how it informed groundwater monitoring. He did the work. He understood the site, but nobody else was taking the time to look at everything. And that's what the rule requires. So again, before we just go and pick some places and some times to increase monitoring, we need to follow the rule and get a conceptual site model in place before a permit application is made that recognizes the fact that groundwater from this site is moving in a radial manner. It is moving quickly through karst topography, and particularly moving to the northwest. That didn't happen here. We've skipped a step. So again, very happy for the additional monitoring. We think Mr. Hart's testimony proved that up to a T, but we need to follow the rules and do the conceptual site model first. And then one other thing, this is a significant change with the increase in frequency and location of groundwater monitoring. And this is a recommendation for a modification, not for remand. This is something that the community and that the people around Taneytown and this landfill should have input on, how their groundwater is monitored that goes under their properties and pops up in public streams. I think this is something that would be fit for additional public comment and a remand, not just a modification. So I put a minute order at the end of my request for hearing today, and I hope you will consider that minute order and adopt it. Thank you again for recognizing me today.
Thank you, sir. At this time, we'll go down the list. If anyone has any questions for you, Ross?
Mr. Chairman, if we could, why don't we hear from counsel for DEQ and counsel for EcoVista?
Yes.
Mr. Nolan, you have a minute left for a moment. I'm not certain who might be speaking. Mr. Heister? Mr. Thompson?
Okay.
I don't know if you had a discussion with Ms. Thompson about splitting your time, Mr. Heister, or how you want to proceed, but.
I have not had that conversation. This is 5 minutes. Okay, so
I'll give you 10. Please proceed, Mr. Heister.
Thank you very much. My name is Michael Heister. I'm here again today on behalf of Ecovista Landfill. And Ecovista is here to encourage you to adopt Judge Bolton's recommended decision. His minute order is already in front of you. If you've ever served on a jury, you know one of the first things that judge tells a jury is what lawyers say isn't evidence. It's argument. The evidence comes from the witnesses and the documents that are presented to the finder of fact. Here was Judge Bolton. The city was allowed to bring in any experts it wanted, any fact witnesses it wanted. We had a 3-day contested hearing in front of Judge Bolton. 10 witnesses testified. There were professional engineers, professional geologists. There were witnesses with decades of experience in this industry. We had a witness who was a professional engineer and a professional geologist. She personally had spent over 2,000 hours working on the geology of this site for years. And that's not even accounting for the geological work done in prior reports by other experts, one of whom was Dr. John Rahana. If his name seems familiar to you, it's because he was a key scientific opponent to the C&H hog farm expansion. He's recognized as one of the preeminent karst experts, not only in Northwest Arkansas, but I think in the country. His work was submitted to Judge Bolton. He's done work, geotechnical work on behalf of Ecovista during prior expansions. The judge heard all that evidence, and based on the evidence, which is detailed in the recommended decision in front of you, he found that the city had failed to meet its burden on any of its claims. Now, the city mentioned prevailing on some additional water sampling. And if you'll look in the judge's recommended decision, you'll see the suggestion for additional water sampling came from Ecovista's witness. She was asked by Ecovista's counsel, would we object to additional water sampling? We said under oath, we had no objection to it. So I think the city's statement that they prevailed on that issue, which Ecovista actually offered up and in the spirit of compromise, is a touch exaggerated. The landfill has been operating under the commission's temporary authorizations and has received over 53,000 tons of solid waste from the Northwest Arkansas region, and respectfully needs to continue to be allowed to do so. There's a lot of discussion at the hearing about fire safety. You'll find the judge's detailed discussion of that at pages 21 through 23 of the recommended decision. And the ALJ, just like this commission, focused on what does the commission's rules require. And the reality is, DEQ properly determined that everything this commission requires was in the application. Moreover, the application incorporates by reference Ecovista's operating plan. And Mr. Nolan was careful with his words, as good lawyers always are, because he didn't talk about the operating plans and measures that Ecovista has in place. Experience sites management. There are a list of emergency contacts. I don't know how the city regulates other industrial facilities, how much it worries about other industrial facilities catching fire in Tontitown, but we are quite confident that Ecovista and the measures they've put in place go far above and beyond what the commission's rule requires. Now, should the commission choose that its rule should require more, that is the commission's prerogative, but this is not a rulemaking procedure. You can't change the rules in the ninth inning. That's a separate proceeding. That's a separate discussion. The ALJ correctly determined that in this instance, the rules were followed, and we respectfully request that the commission adopt the ALJ's minute order as drafted. Do you have any questions for me?
I think we're going to go ahead and give Ms. Thompson's statements before we do questions.
Thank you.
Good morning. Again, good morning. My name is Lisa Thompson, and I represent the Division of Environmental Quality. And I just wanted to briefly state that today, under Rule 8.618, today we're here for commission review and oral argument in this matter that we did have a 3-day hearing on back in early February. And the standard of review today is a de novo review. So in a de novo review, our main focus is how is the law applied and how was the law interpreted in Judge Moulton's recommended decision. So one thing that I wanted to also state is that this obviously is not a rulemaking, it's a permit appeal. And the law was correctly applied and interpreted in the recommended decision based on Rule 22. Rule 22 is the solid waste management rules that are established, which establishes standards and criteria for solid waste management. It doesn't set established or any kind of standards or criteria for emergency planning. Okay. And all of the points that the judge made in the recommended decision, they all were correct. They applied, they were correct, concise, and they were all compliant with Rule 22. And at this time, DEQ asks the commission to adopt the minute order that you all should have in front of you. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you want to do Mr. Nolan's remaining time?
Mr. Nolan, do you have a minute you'd like?
Thank you again for recognizing me. I am asking you to give meaning to 22.4111. It requires a plan and emergency communications, and that is what I am asking you to require of them. I understand that it's the judge's recommended decision that not much is required. We disagree. We want an interpretation and a ruling from you that require meaningful protection of human health and the environment with communications and fire response. Thank you. And do I stay for questions?
All right, we'll just go down the line. Commissioner Race, any questions? Mr. Ward? Mr. Melton?
Mr. Melton, you wouldn't be happy if I didn't get. Of course, Mr. Melton.
I'm sorry. I am probably, I'm the only one that sat down and read every silly page of all that testimony. That was abuse. I wouldn't recommend it for anyone. And I did that because growing up as a kid, I was caving. I lived in the karst terrain. I know karst terrain. I have 2 degrees in geology and I've done dye tracing. I've written articles on karst terrain. And so I'm very familiar with this. And I wanted to see really what was the testimony on in here. So I want to disabuse everyone about the conceptual model because it's just that. It is a conceptual model. Where it is today, it won't be tomorrow. I've had people dump dye that we didn't know about, that we got hits that screwed up everything. And it's very, very difficult. It's one of the most difficult things in the world to model fluid flow in a fractured solution terrain. It's just, so if you bring it into me, I'm going to be very skeptical of it. They're just very, very difficult. So I have trouble hanging your hat on that because it is conceptual. It will never tell the truth. It will never be accurate. It'll be possible sometimes for you to get some good information out of that. So I'm going to take you to task for that one. The other thing is, I guess I wanted to point out is you're relying on what you said was a licensed engineer. I'm not going to make a big deal of it, but he is not a licensed engineer in the state of Arkansas, and his testimony was in violation of state law. So I would urge you, if you have him come back again, that he becomes licensed in the state of Arkansas because he cannot prefer expert witness information and testimony. So that's just my opinion. You want to visit about it later, we certainly can, but there is a problem there with taking his testimony. Finally, I want to ask a question and I don't disagree with it, about the emergency plan and the operation. This thing has been there for a long time. Has the city officially asked Ecovista to develop that and provide it to them.
I mean, that is the purpose of this permit appeal. The public comments and in this proceeding, that is what we are seeking as relief.
Well, I guess where I'm going is if this is of paramount importance to the health, safety, and welfare of the city, why have you waited this long to do it? And why haven't you already done that? I mean, there's nothing to keep you from doing that. And so I guess I'm wondering why you feel that we have to compel this. If you think it's a big issue, why has the city not done that already? And I guess I would take Ecovista to task. Why haven't they done that? Why is there not cooperation between Ecovista and the city? Now, that bothers me. That's very troublesome that you're hanging your hat on something. If that is a problem to the community, they should have done that already. And why are we waiting this long if it is of paramount importance? And why hasn't it been done? And why hasn't the city made efforts to do that? I think that's very troublesome to me. I think I would like to hear that the city is making an effort to do that, regardless of whatever this commission does to protect the citizens of the community.
We can't make Waste Management do anything outside of this permit appeal. This is our venue.
My opinion is that you're using an issue that shouldn't be an issue.
This is our avenue.
And beyond that, at the end of the day, after reading and struggling through all this and reading Judge Moulton's opinion, at the very bottom, the rules are just vague. They're horribly vague. And in fact, your expert testimony said not only were they vague, they were vague in most of the jurisdictions for landfills in the United States. And we can't fix that. And we have to come back to what Counselor Thompson said, which is we have to look at the law. And the law is the kind of have fulfilled that requirement because they're purposely vague. I don't know whether it's purposeful or whether it was just sloppy rule writing. But that needs to be fixed. And so you're asking us to fix something that's unbelievably vague, in which in my mind and in which in Judge Moulton's mind, they fulfill their requirement. And I think your own witness said that, did he not?
No, he said it was vague, but that it was not adequate to even meet the requirements for an emergency communications plan.
But we can't fix that vagueness.
You can give that rule meaning, and that's exactly what I said in my rebuttal.
I don't think that's within our power to do so, sir. But be that as it may, thank you for your time.
Any questions, Chris?
Thank you.
At this time, Mr. Chairman, but that briefly address the number 85, Commissioner Melton. That's fine. Commissioner Melton, you expressed concern about communication between Ecovista and the city approximately 6 weeks ago. I don't know the exact date. Ecovista acted through counsel, myself, emailed the city's attorney. Mr. Nolan said, hey, why don't we can we go ahead and get your fire chief in touch with our chief of operations, just let him talk about fire coordination issues. And the communication back through the city's attorney was they declined.
Okay, well, thank you. I want to point out, there was a book written by the former CEO of Southwest Airlines, is entitled "Do the Right Thing." I really expect for Ecovista as a corporation to do the right thing, whether it's required by law or not. Thank you.
The council said what? The city declined.
No, that is incorrect. We offered to engage in negotiations regarding the settlement of this case. That is an incorrect statement.
They offered to engage in communicate or in discussions if Ecovista would put those conditions in the permit, which the ALJ specifically said we don't have to do. If the city wants to put it in a contract, happy to talk about that.
All right. At this time, I believe there's 2 minute orders have been proposed. Anyone entertain a motion on this?
I move we affirm Judge Moulton's recommended decision.
All right, there is a motion. Is there a second? Second by Commissioner Ward. All right, Patty, would you please call the roll?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. All right, at this time, the recommended decision has been adopted. Is there any other, Judge Moulton, do you have a comment?
The only concern I've got is I haven't seen minute orders come around, so I don't know.
We've signed and we're moving.
Okay, just want to make certain that, has Commissioner Moss signed them as well? Okay. All right, just don't run off before you sign the last minute order, if you could.
All right, okay. Commissioner Melton has a question for Shane. He has a question.
Yes. What's the appropriate step to deal with this rule? These things are so vague. I don't like it. This is, I'm not thinking you task, but this happened way before any of this.
Sure, and well, and that's a little bit interesting because as the secretary of the department, that includes both DEQ and this commission all in one department. I would say that, you all have the rulemaking authority. You can ask the division to bring clarifications. You could also somebody can always bring a third-party request to bring those. So I think there are multiple avenues to provide clarity for rules, but ultimately that's a PC&E rule. Typically, in the past, DEQ has been the entity that sometimes brings recommended decisions based on, a standard review process or a third-party request sometimes. So I think there are multiple options, but they all then have to go through the official rulemaking response, which would be, approval by me as secretary, approval by the governor's office, and then eventually review and approval by the legislature as well. So I think if there are certain rules, then I would encourage you all as a commissioner to maybe work with Bailey and some of her DEQ staff. If there's some things that you would like to specifically comment on, you can send that in, or you can ask the DEQ folks to if there's an area of concern to maybe bring some options for the commission's consideration that would then have to go through that entire process.
This whole process. National failure, lawsuits, and people. I don't know if we can fix everything, but I'm not this person.
Sure. Well, and it's probably a good time to just kind of briefly mention that, the state, through laws that were passed in the last few legislative sessions, are also going through the process of codification of rules. So we're doing that not just with PC&E Commission rules, but Oil and Gas Commission rules, LP gas rules, all the rules that we have within this department. So there is some rewrite. There's a movement that's separate and apart than our typical review process to codify those rules basically into the BLR style and format. So that is causing a lot of review on our part as we go through those rules to make sure that the rewriting by BLR into that codification format matches the current intent of what the rule is and what the current language of the rule is best possible. But in terms of reviewing what the rule is, I think that's something that, like I said, this commission has authority to do. DEQ can also propose modifications, but they have to then all go through that entire rulemaking process that obviously includes stakeholder engagement, public comment after it's been through all the official reviews and we receive approval from the secretary of whatever department it is and the governor's office to move forward with that process. I don't believe that.
You can always take a vote, Commissioner, and make a request, but at the end of the day, whether you're amending a statute or amending a rule at this point, there's a bureaucratic process that you have to go through. So I mean, the first step is you gotta get buy-in from the secretary, who would have to get approval from the governor, who would have to get approval from the legislative committees, and I'm talking about
My
rulemaking.
suggestion-
And
What I
well-
would suggest is that,
Or are you gonna refer to the qualification process?
no, I'm not deferring to the codification process. My suggestion is for you to sit down with appropriate DEQ staff to walk through the areas of concerns you have to see if there is some agreement in those areas to move forward, and then we can start the process with that, at least as an initial step.
Well, other than seeing child marks, seems like most youngsters should have it. On fire, back home, all this stuff, we're talking about, we had a number of big issues with regional landfill bodies, and it just seems like.
So, I mean, I'm happy to participate in those discussions if you'd like with DEQ and you as a commissioner as well. Sure. Thank you.
If there's no other business, we are adjourned. Thank everyone for coming.